Good afternoon and welcome to week 18 of the True Normal. The name is Roelf vanderMerwe, and I'm a director at vanderMerwe and Robertson Attorneys. Just a special word of welcome again to my three colleagues, George Robertson, Christel Pansegrou, and Eugene Groenewald. And to Theo Vorster, CEO of Galileo Capital. Again, needs no further introduction. Theo has been with us for the last 18 weeks, and Theo will again today facilitate the conversation with our guest speaker. Then to Kees, Snijders, CEO of Flickswitch, our guest speaker today. Kees, welcome. Then we've asked Libu van Aswegen, Property Director at the Patsuwane Henny Group of Attorneys in Bloemfontein. Libo will conclude and end our session today and thank both Theo and Kees. As you know, our session is an interactive platform and you'll be given the opportunity to ask questions to both speakers. And we just ask that you state your name and the business you represent when asking a question. Now, we have asked Kees to share his thoughts on the technology trends that have unfolded in South Africa and the world at large due to COVID. Now, Kees, just in our professional and personal worlds, I can think of the following: the wide-scale adoption of e-commerce and on-demand delivery, the acceleration of digital migration across all industries, and within our national law firm, printing volumes and volumes of document is for sure something of the past. The reimagination of entertainment, the reimagination of education, and the online teaching our children are currently receiving at schools. Then the increased adoption of the Internet of Things, and without a doubt, automation. And I've got no doubt that you will elaborate on some of these points. Now, let me introduce Kees Snijders. Born to a Dutch immigrant in Johannesburg, studied at Rau, and in 1995, he attended a postgraduate program in the US where he completed a master's in computer science at Syracuse University, New York. He started his career working as a programmer at Cambridge Technology Partners based in Boston and was then transferred to the UK operation. He left to join Deutsche Bank and returned to South Africa and got into the telecommunications sector and spent 5 years working for one of Vodacom's service providers. Then in 2007, he started Flickswitch, where he is the CEO at present. Kees, also a father of 4 children. Kees, we're looking forward to your talk today. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Rolf. And thanks to all the other participants, and thanks for the opportunity to share some of my thoughts on technology. So the unfortunate name I was blessed with in the South African context came about because my parents immigrated just before I was born, and they did not know the connotations attached to my name. But I have seen my name on the front page of Die Burger with a baboon in various guises a number of times. So I answered to both Kees, the correct pronunciation, or Kees. But yeah, thanks for having me. I shall just share my screen. Thank you. Rolf, can you see my screen?
Yes, Kees, I can see it. Thanks.
Yes, Kees, perfectly.
Okay, so yeah, just a brief introduction to our business before I delve into the wider subject of technology. So we are one of the fortunate businesses that actually benefited from the lockdown and the ensuing move to a work from home by default scenario. And that is because we as a company developed a platform called SIM Control that our clients use to manage connectivity from SIM cards. So it's what's called SaaS software, which means software as a service, meaning nothing needs to be installed, everything lives on the internet. But we set ourselves the task of making it as easy as possible for clients to, at large scale, manage SIM cards. And you can imagine that because of COVID, the demand for this type of service has escalated pretty rapidly. So in terms of our presence in Africa and which countries we're currently doing business in, the business was started in South Africa, and for the first 7 years of our existence, that was our primary focus, to sell to the South African market. Around 2009, we started exploring. 2015, we started exploring some expansion possibilities into the continent, and we discovered that African markets were very ripe for the kind of model that we were building. So our SIM Control product today is live in various forms, various guises, in 8 African markets. In some places, we've white labeled our software in partnership with operators, such as Mozambique and Tanzania, where we've partnered with Vodacom. And in some other cases, we take our product to market directly, as we do in South Africa under the Flickswitch brand. So the COVID effect on Flickswitch, I can most clearly demonstrate in a graph of the number of organizations that we count as our clients. So you'll notice a marked increase around the time of February this year, when South Africa all of a sudden went into lockdown. A lot of businesses were sending people home, and all of a sudden they had this problem of ensuring that people have data and they can still work from home. Not everyone is fortunate enough to have a fiber connection in home, and fiber connectivity in South Africa, I would say, is still in its infancy. There are many, many people that rely on the cellular network infrastructure for data connectivity. But enough about Flickswitch. So some of the trends in technology that I thought I would highlight. I am by no means an expert on all of these, but yeah, these are just some learnings. I hope you find it interesting and entertaining. But yeah, in a nutshell, I think very significant e-commerce activity has increased because of COVID. Education and e-learning has become a very hot topic almost overnight. Entertainment, or what actually constitutes entertainment, I think is something that a lot of people are coming to grips with. The traditional reliance on Saturday in front of the TV to watch some sport is for the time being completely off the menu. But yeah, so I thought I'd touch on that. And then in terms of the so-called Internet of Things, or what's often termed the 4th industrial revolution, I think there's some really interesting developments in that space. And then security, I think, is also a very interesting topic, and I'll highlight some specific cases to demonstrate that. So first, in terms of e-commerce, this is a graph from the McKinsey Quarterly, and it's about the US e-commerce penetration, but I think it's globally relevant. And the observation is made that the linear sort of year-on-year growth accelerated in 3 months as much as it would have otherwise in the space of 10 years. And I think this is panned out all over the world. In terms of e-learning, most schools had to make a plan overnight to move to an online e-learning environment. Within the global context, Africa has a big problem with moving to e-learning, and that is the percentage of households that have access to a reliable broadband internet connection. And you'll see that Africa is pretty low compared to every other continent. South Africa is streets ahead of most of Africa, but our internet penetration in South Africa also sits at the low 56.3%. And that is people that have any form of an internet connection. So that could just be a mobile telephone. But so almost half of our population have never accessed the internet. So some challenges present themselves in delivering education because of the lack of widely available access. Quality broadband does make a lot possible, but the mobile data costs are still very high in South Africa. The operators have done quite a lot in terms of making educational resources toll-free or so-called zero-rated. But there's a limitation on the type of service that you can access via a toll-free channel. And that is because that the infrastructure that operators use to deliver data, it's simply not viable to expect them to deliver rich media or the kind of quality educational content encapsulated in videos on demand and YouTube platforms. To carry that data for free would be completely unviable, and it would stretch their infrastructure to the limit. In terms of moving to online learning, it's a very different model to traditional learning. So a lot of teachers have had to undergo some training to be able to continue to teach. From the operators, the telco operators in South Africa, they have long been constrained in terms of spectrum because of delays in the so-called analog to digital migration project. ICASA has not freed up any spectrum for the large number of years up to now. But because of COVID-19, they've made some concessions, and they've released what's called emergency spectrum for use by the operators. The only catch is that the allocation is only been granted until November. So, from an operator, from a telco operator standpoint, it's quite a difficult decision to invest in the hardware required to utilize that spectrum if you know it's only going to be available for a short period of time. Hope is that it will be extended, and that ultimately operators will be equipped to roll out 5G on the scale that they want to roll out. And ultimately, that should lead to cheaper data prices, which will be to the benefit of everybody. So just in terms of the cost of data, and this is something that gets a lot of media attention, and it's often stated as fact that South Africa has some of the most expensive data in the world. So compared to the rest of the African continent, that isn't that true. We lie around the middle of the table. But if a gig of data costs $7, that is still a very significant amount for the average man on the street. So next topic I wanted to touch on is entertainment, and specifically the impact of COVID on the entertainment industry. This is just an infographic that shows you the financial size of the industry. There's around $160 billion year-on-year growth of around 10%. And you can imagine that it's definitely going to accelerate because of COVID. A lot of youngsters spending a lot of time at home with not a lot to do. So so like I said earlier, in terms of sport, there's been a complete lack of the traditional sporting codes on our televisions, and an interesting thing has happened, and that is that virtual sports or a form of physical participation in virtual sports that still require physical exertion has become quite popular. The Formula One Virtual Grand Prix series got some record-breaking viewership figures, and what was also interesting is that we had traditional Formula One drivers competing in the virtual Formula One series, and similarly we had top cyclists competing against each other in virtual races, and these aren't. I don't think that these are gimmicks. I think a lot of this type of activity will continue post-COVID because of the advantages that that lie with a virtual form of competition, much broader reach, much broader participation, and that kind of thing. So in terms of entertainment, I would say streaming and gaming have really taken off. I wanted to share a brief video clip with you. So I don't think this has been done on this platform before. So I'm hoping for the best. I'm just going to share my sound with you. 1 second. Okay, this is a clip from a film called Ready Player One, based on a famous book. Yeah, I'll click play now.
In 2045, there's nowhere left to go. Nowhere except the oasis. I was born in 2025. But I wish I'd grown up in the 1980s. Like all my heroes. I live here in Columbus, Ohio. In 2045, it's still ranked the fastest growing city on Earth. But it sure doesn't seem like it when you live in the stacks. They called our generation the missing millions. Missing not because we went anywhere. There's nowhere left to go. Nowhere except the oasis. It's the only place that feels like I mean anything. A world where the limits of reality are your own imagination.
So that that was a fairly classical book that got turned into a film about this dystopian reality where the Earth has become such a miserable place that people prefer to take their escape into a virtual reality. Similar theme to the movie The Matrix. But why I think it's relevant, because for the first time, a lot of us have gotten a glimpse of what it would be like to be locked in our own homes for a protected period of time. What has also happened is that on a gaming hardware point of view, virtual reality goggles have now for the first time become very cheap and commonly available, and part of the new generation gaming consoles. If you buy a PlayStation 4 or an Xbox, you can now buy them with a set of virtual reality goggles. And the level of gaming and the level of immersion and the psychological appeal, especially to youngsters, shouldn't be underestimated. And I think we're going to see some really interesting things happening going forward. But yeah, from a gaming point of view, there's also the rise of what's called gaming commentators. So when big online gaming tournaments happen, there's a site called Twitch where people can log in and follow the action live as they would a normal sporting event. But what is also interesting is that there's also a financial model where players where spectators can pay a certain amount and then have a position in the arena, be able to manipulate the cameras, and be able to interact with the contestants in the game. Just a whole different spin on what constitutes entertainment. And then obviously the streaming services like Netflix and Amazon and HBO Prime and these types of services have seen a massive surge in demand. So further on the topic of e-gaming, I mean, these are stats from 2018, but the prize pools or the amount of money that is being won by elite e-gamers is actually quite staggering. The second highest paid event in 2018 after Wimbledon was the so-called Dota, the Defense of the Ancients 2 international championships. And then these are the highest earning e-gamers in the world. So e-sport players earning up to $7 million just from playing a computer game, which sounds absolutely crazy, but it's real. And what you do find also is in many of the Eastern countries like Korea and Japan, e-gamers have become celebrities that actually draw more fans, more fan support, are recognized on the streets more so than the national sporting stars. So onto this topic of IoT or the fourth industrial revolution, and I think this is a topic that's often it's written about in the media, but the kinds of applications that we often see I don't think are really relevant to us here in South Africa. Applications like a smart fridge, for example, that keeps track of the contents of the fridge and submits a shopping list to a supermarket for delivery when you're running low on groceries in your fridge. That's a first world problem. We care more about third world problems in South Africa. So some examples of third world problems and some examples of some really successful businesses based in South Africa that have a very much an IoT focus. So this is a client of ours. They're called AquaCheck, and they specialize in a very niche agricultural application, and that's the manufacturing and distribution of soil moisture probes. So soil moisture probes, as you can imagine, get inserted into the soil, contains sensors at various levels. A number of these would be installed on a farmer's land, and then coupled with irrigation systems, it basically achieves the goal of more effectively using scarce resources, water, and also doing so in an automated fashion. But this company's been going since 2005. They're exporting their probes to 20 countries all around the world. Manufacturing happens in South Africa. Another company we do quite a lot of business with, also a big success story in IoT, a company called Digital Matter Embedded. And they have a whole raft of different applications, but very much focused on the kind of problems and applications that are relevant in a country like ours. But to that point, I think through our dealings with the tracking industry in Africa, I can say that South African companies specifically are incredibly sophisticated when it comes to the field of asset tracking. They have some of the best hardware tested in the cauldron that is South Africa, and often born out of necessity. We have in South Africa and Africa at large, we have an issue around the security of valuable assets. So it stands to reason that technology that makes it possible to track those types of assets has a lot of value, and is a big export product for these businesses. We also have world-class software businesses in that same space. Companies like Mix Telematics, Tracker, Netstar. These are all world-class businesses at that line of at that industry, in that industry. There's another interesting example. These guys develop a company called Lumkani, and they develop fire alarms. These fire alarms are fairly cheap and affordable, but they have an interesting call it signal propagation model, where a fire alarm transmits the fact that there's a fire after it's been detected through smoke and heat. It transmits that fact to all the other devices within the same region, thereby propagating the alarm. It's a company based out of Cape Town. Some youngsters out of Cape Town, out of UCT, engineering faculty, have developed this product. So IoT is first and foremost possible because of connectivity. Connectivity comes in lots of different flavors. The typical cellular connectivity is well known, but there are also new players in the connectivity sphere, such as LoRa and NB-IoT and Sigfox, and these are all also becoming prevalent. And then there's satellite, and satellite is evolving. There's technology that is very interesting that is being developed by South Africa's very own Elon Musk, who now resides in California. But Elon Musk, alongside with all these other endeavors, has launched a product or a company called Starlink. And Starlink's mission is to deploy enough low orbit satellites to be able to support broadband internet across the entire Earth. And this is a real photo that was taken in the Netherlands in 2019 of a row of these satellites currently orbiting the Earth. I'm pretty sure they are visible to the naked eye in South Africa as well. So in terms of connectivity, so the increased rollout and the capacity increases in the undersea cable infrastructure has really escalated, and there is there's definitely no lack in terms of international bandwidth from a South African perspective. I think those of us that have a few grey hairs can remember that South Africa used to distinguish, or internet providers in South Africa used to distinguish between local and international traffic, and you paid a lot more for international traffic than local traffic. But that problem has gone away because of these undersea cables and the competition, because there are numerous undersea cables now connecting us to the internet backbone. So infrastructure as a service is also a thing, and finally, the first African installations of both the Microsoft Azure infrastructure and the Amazon infrastructure have both come online. Microsoft They have 2 data centers, one in Johannesburg and one in Cape Town. And the AWS Cape Town region was launched in the first quarter of this year. And again, what this enables is utilizing that infrastructure to deliver software products to any customer anywhere in the world. So just some reflections on who some of the winners are in the work from home scenario. Other than Flickswitch, there are a number of other technology companies that have done really well if you look at their share prices. And one of these interesting enough is the platform that we're talking on right now. Zoom the Zoom share price has really increased in leaps and bounds, as has Slack, which is a communication tool, which is become very useful for companies that need to facilitate remote communication. So some of the losers, as you can imagine, companies that have a reliance on the tourist industry, such as Airbnb and Uber, have gone through some painful changes. Booking.com has announced that they are cutting their workforce by a quarter, and these are massive businesses, and they are likely to feel pain long term because of COVID. So in terms of South Africa, I think these are listed companies, and these are share price movements in these companies. And from a technology perspective, the only numbers that really jump out are Prosus and Naspers and I guess Vodacom, all companies that have benefited from COVID. And an interesting thing to note, if you're talking about technology, is the completely parallel universe that exists in China. This is a graph from the most recent edition of The Economist, and everybody or most people know of Baidu, Alibaba, and Tencent. That's one of the reasons the Naspers share has done reasonably well over time, is because of their stake in Tencent. But the new players on the block in China are companies Meituan Dianping and Pinduoduo. But yeah, these are pretenders to the throne. But another interesting dynamic of the technological landscape is call it the geopolitical toing and froing between the US and China from a tech perspective. Huawei has felt the wrath of Donald Trump. Huawei's infrastructure is banned from doing business with US telcos, and they're also banned from utilizing important pieces of software from US companies, like the Android operating system from Google. A more recent, some cynics would say this is more to do with Trump trying to divert attention from the US's or his terrible handling of the COVID pandemic. But yeah, the TikTok is a very popular app, and really one of the first apps that has Chinese origins, but has been really widely adopted in the rest of the world. The fears around sort of TikTok harvesting information and manipulating people's behavior, and then basically being a security threat to the rest of the world is it's not been banned yet, but it's the purported reason for its banning. So just briefly touching on the topic of cybersecurity, a hot topic, but yeah, what you see on your screen here is one of the most wanted people currently by the FBI in the US. It's a guy called Maxim Yakubets. Maxim is part of a group of hackers that operate out of Russia. They are known collectively as Evil Corp, and their most recent successful attack was the ransomware attack on Garmin. If you use a Garmin watch and you like to track your runs, you would have noticed that the Garmin Connect servers completely stopped working a few weeks ago. And towards the end of July, it started working again. And the reason it started working again is, they haven't come out and said so in public, but everybody assumes that they paid the $10 million of ransom money that Evil Corp demanded of them to basically decrypt their own infrastructure. And what's interesting about this particular attack and some others is that the security experts talk about the attack vector. The attack vector is often social engineering, and it's often targeted at people working from home, or since COVID, because people are working from home. The security precautions or the infrastructure that they use to connect to their place of work might not be as secure as it otherwise would have been. So just some final reflections, and these are just some personal reflections. When we talk about building technology companies in South Africa, which I've been fortunate enough to do for the last 13 years. So some of the pros and some of the cons, and I think South Africa continues to produce some really top quality computer science graduates because of our quality education system at the tertiary level. We've had the good fortune of, since lockdown, employing another 3 programmers that are all graduates from the Cape University's tertiary computer science programs. But the con I see around talent is that the competition is now global. Amazon have a fairly big operation in Cape Town, and they are employing engineers, local engineers, and they've relocated. And last I heard, they've relocated around 300 to 400 engineers and their families from other regions in the world to Cape Town. So fantastic for our economy. But the competition for talent is real. So an advantage of operating out of SA is that your costs are in rands, and potentially your income is in harder currencies. One of the cons we found is that it's still very difficult to move money, and it's also very difficult. The rules and regulations around IP, intellectual property, it's seen as capital in nature, and you need exchange control approval to basically move IP outside of South Africa. And I think that's quite a big inhibitor to a lot of tech initiatives. People would rather build elsewhere because they feel if they build something of value, it would be very difficult to sell. South Africa is definitely a gateway to Africa, and we have first world infrastructure. But on the con side, we definitely have a worsening compliance burden. It's increasingly becoming more difficult to do business in this country, and I feel from a startup perspective, more could be done in terms of tax breaks. That's not really a technology point, but I thought I'd throw that in there anyway. Yeah, so that is it from my presentation. I would be happy to take some questions. And thank you for listening to me.
Kees, from my point of view, very, very informative. I must congratulate you. Well done. It's always nice to see when a technology expert takes you through their presentations. They will always have something in terms of that other people don't have. But my question, Kees, is actually twofold. The one might not link to the other one, but you talked about the new companies challenging for the throne in China. And my question is just what are they doing? Where do they fit into the picture? What is their strengths? That's the one hand. So what do those companies do? But the other side of the coin is, if you were to look at skills in the next 3, 4, 5 years, or even 10 years, what skills will really come to the fore in terms of your work and your space? It'll be unfair to tell you which will disappear, because that's anybody else's guess. But where do you think the skills will move towards, and just what skills do you think might disappear? And I'm talking about what professional skills do you think might disappear in the future?
Yeah, so those are interesting questions Theo, I think both these examples of rapidly growing companies in China, they are marketplace companies. They match buyers to products. We saw a few years ago this massive surge in I think Groupon type companies. So Groupon specials for a certain type of product, only available for a short period of time, and those kinds of companies saw some success, briefly. But in China, because of the massive scale of that market, I think those types of players that do that effectively, matching buyers to sellers in a marketplace, and basically take a slice of each transaction, they are very successful. But I would encourage you to read that article in The Economist. It goes into some detail about these companies. So in terms of the second part of your question, so I guess around what skills specifically, I'm going to answer it from a technology perspective. So in terms of technology, the technology landscape has proliferated in terms of the available tools and programming languages and stacks that you can build on. I think what is happening is that a lot of the call them the legacy skills are becoming less and less relevant because of this move to infrastructure as a service. So for example, if you were making your living as a sysadmin looking after Unix servers, physical servers inside racks, or you were perhaps a DBA looking after installations, physical installations of massive databases in an enterprise environment, or even just specific programming skills that are that are built on top of, for example, the SAP environment. I think a lot of those skills become less and less relevant as the world moves to infrastructure as a service and software as a service. In terms of, I guess, what more broadly speaking, the human qualities that are going to be in demand going forward. When we start talking about artificial intelligence and machine learning and this type of stuff, there's a lot of fears about jobs becoming obsolete, or people basically losing the ability to earn a living because a machine can do that so much better. I think there's some real threats there to existing occupations, and definitely occupations where the work is repetitive and methodical. That's the kind of stuff that machines are good at. What machines are bad at are the kind of things that humans are good at, and that's being creative and collaborating with other humans. And there's this talk of the 4 C's. So collaboration, curiosity, and I think compassion is another thing. To actually care about what you do and put your heart and soul into something is something a human can do, not a computer.
Kees, thank you. Is there any questions at this point in time? I'm opening the floor for any questions. I think there is coming. Yes, Roelf.
Yes, thank you. My question relates to your section on cybercrime. Without a doubt, since lockdown, the law firms have received numerous communications from the Legal Practice Council in order to be on the lookout for cybercrime. I mean, attorneys are custodians of trust money. I always say attorneys carry the geldsakkie. And how do you think a business, like specifically a law firm, can protect themselves against cybercrime?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I think it applies more broadly to most firms. The scary thing with cybercrime, and we were talking before the call, is that you can never be 100% comfortable or 100% secure. You have to do as much as you can, But yeah, there's always a risk there, and the fact that you can't protect against everything is something people need to make peace with. But yeah, I guess specifically around protecting financial assets and bank accounts and that sort of thing, it's important to limit the access to those accounts to people with the authority to have that access. And when you're talking about secure access, the important thing to note is identity verification, or identity basically what's often called factors in security parlance. So two-factor authentication or three-factor authentication is important. So the factors are specifically something so a password, that's one factor. The second thing, something you have, so that's a token, a phone, a smart application on your phone. And the third factor that improves security is something you are. So something you are could be a biometric or an iris scan, something that uniquely identifies you. But yeah, a very common attack vector in this country, specifically using cell phone infrastructure, is fraudulent SIM swaps. So a fraudulent SIM swap, if you have possession of somebody's cellular identity, that's one factor. And if you then have them divulge their passwords and PIN codes to you, that's a second factor. That could give you complete access to their account. And so you have to be very vigilant around specifically your cell phone, if that's one of the one of the means of identifying yourself. And the things to look out for is if your phone suddenly shows no service or stops working, and you don't have an explanation for that, that's a red light, a red flag.
Thank you. That's any other questions? If there's anybody else with a question. My question is, Kees, obviously IT is there to assist us with work stuff and make what we do more efficient and make our businesses run better, and unfortunately complicates the issue around passwords and cybersecurity. But from a quality of life point of view, where does technology fit into in terms of adding to us as individuals, to our quality of life?
Yeah, I would think the biggest sort of if you can gain more time, so time to do what you want to do, time to spend with your family, time that basically you can use for activities that make you happy as a human being, that improves your quality of life, and that's where technology can play a big part, because technology used wisely can automate and expedite a lot of the mundane, repetitive, difficult stuff in your life. And there, I think one of the biggest contributors is using automation and making use of the appropriate software tools. So when you say SaaS, software as a service, there are a plethora of different tools out there that you can basically buy and use as needed, and you can connect these tools via APIs. And a typical example would be an online accounting package. Most businesses do accounting. A lot of them do them in a traditional, not very efficient way. There's now the advent of online cloud-based accounting services. The one we use is called Xero, Xero. It comes out of New Zealand, of all places. But Xero have done a really good job of creating an ecosystem around accounts, and basically you get the ability of having other software systems in your organization talk to your accounting system, and not having to spend hours and hours doing data capture or data uploads or migration of data from one system to another. Long-winded answer, but I hope I've covered your question.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kees. Is there any further questions? Kees, I must say from my point of view, this was well done, well structured, very informative. Surely, thank you very much. I'm just going to spend 10 minutes dumbing down the conversation because I think this was a very high level conversation. And I just want us just to have a reflection on where we are, because I think people kind of forget where we are. And I'm going to start off with just a first slide, and I hope you can see the slide, but this is the South African access deaths, that line there. This is what the normal deaths, and you can see how it picks up around winter with our winter flu season. And this year, for all practical purposes, South Africa did not experience a winter flu season. So according to the South African Medical Research Council, this is the number of people that died of any cause, but that shows you what the surplus number is. So therefore, whatever you look at, we have had quite a bit of additional people, unfortunately, passing away, and the major factor should be COVID. But the nice portion is these things are starting to turn around. So although we are now at a very high level, because certainly you rather want to be here than there, it seems that it's turning around. And if you look at the next slide, this is the number of new cases in South Africa. And you can see, although there's differences, once you start to accumulate them, and you accumulate them on a daily basis as they are reported, and you're trying to figure out, you can actually see we are starting to see a trend. And I think we underestimate this fact, but we are starting to see a trend. This is new cases. This is the total number of cases, infections in South Africa. But that's the good news. We have had our peak at this point in time. This doesn't mean it can come back, but it's starting to show the positive nature of it. And the most important graphic on this is the R rate. Now, the R rate is, I'm not going to go technical, but it's simply for every person that has the virus, how many people do we infect? So if it's 1, that means every single person infects one other person. If it's 2 or 2.5, that is the number of people that everyone infects. Now, initially, the view was that it's between 2 and 3. Every people that has it will infect between 2 and 3 persons. This is probably behavior, but we are nicely under 1 now. We are at 0.71, which means that every person infects less than 1 person. And this is the start of the positive news. So I think we need to be very careful when we look at this. It is starting to become positive, and the total number of people with the virus is coming down, which I think is good news. This is the economy, and what is this? This was a statistical analysis that was done over the weekend. What it does is it looks at daily economic activity and how countries are faring in terms of that. You can see here before the virus is based on an index level of 100. And then you see how countries' economic activity dips and then start to pick up. First of all, let's look at Sweden. Remember, Sweden is the country that did not lock down. You can see the Swedish economy's drop was a lot less than the rest of the world there. Sweden's drop was much less than some of the other countries, but look if you carry it on. Now, Sweden is now in a worse position than the rest of them. Look at that. Sweden is in a worse position, whereas a country next door, Norway, lockdown, deep dip, recovering, and it's there. So this is the result of countries that locked down late or didn't lock down at all and had the problems, and countries on a later phase. And you can see some of the countries only now had their lockdown much later, but this shows you the economic activity. If I then, and it seems that there is, once you start to get through the dip, once you reach this level of infection, things can start to go better. But I want to just quickly go to the United States election coming up. And the US election is going to be all about the virus. And look at this nice view. This is obviously a beekeeper. I told him, as an expert in the field, I strongly recommend wearing it, but he just kept bringing up his rights. And this is kind of what the US election is going to be about. Now, let me show you the latest update from The Economist. And this is a nice page they update it every day. In order to win the US Electoral College, remember, the popular vote doesn't win you the presidency. And we had 2 recent experiences. Hillary Clinton got much more votes than Donald Trump. Al Gore got more votes than George W. Bush, but both lost the election. Why? Because they've got a system based around the Electoral College. Now, in order to have the number of delegates to win the election, you need about 270 delegates. At this point in time, you can note what happened here as the pandemic started to hit. Donald Trump was very close to Joe Biden. In effect, he was ahead most of the early part of the year. But as the virus came around, Joe Biden started to increase his number. Now, the problem is, we knew last time around, the expectation was that Hillary Clinton would win. At this point, it looks like the best guesstimate by The Economist is that Joe Biden is actually quite nicely ahead. That they believe Donald Trump has an 11% chance of winning the election. Joe Biden has an 89% chance of winning the election. And the points around this specifically is about the economy and the fact that Mr. Trump is viewed as not handling the pandemic very well. But this is what it's going to be about. It's going to be about scientists, knowledgeable people giving advice to somebody that simply doesn't take advice, and how the American voters is going to vote. But that is all. I just thought I will end off with a few notes from a bit of the update. I think if there's not a second wave, which might happen, or third waves, which might happen, we have seen the top of this. Remember that the deaths is still way ahead of the normal deaths. That's going to carry on for at least the next months or 6 weeks, but there is slowly starting to be light at the end of the tunnel if you look at the statistics. But that is it from my side. And I just again want to thank Kees. I thought it was a brilliant presentation. Thank you very much. Any questions? We've got about 2 or 3 minutes to go. Any questions? Then from my side, thank you very much for joining.
Yeah, Theo, I'm just going to ask Libu van Aswegen. He wants to both thank yourself and Kees and conclude our session. Libu, are you around?
I'm online. Thanks, Roelf. Can you hear me?
Yes.
First of all, Roelf, I really want to thank vanderMerwe and Robert's attorneys for this platform. It's been most informative for me the past lockdown as well. You know, they always talk about how to win friends and influence people, but you've made it possible for us to be introduced to new friends every week. So thank you for that. And then to Kees as well. Kees, I stumbled upon this saying, you know, when there's chaos, everybody has a plan to fix it. But it takes a leader in his or her field of expertise, of real understanding, to straighten things out. And I think it's heartening for us that you can use international technology to help local businesses to roll out their ideas and to be innovative. And then again, thank you, Theo. Every week, it's most informative, and we look forward to the next session later on in the month.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Libu, and thanks everybody for joining. Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Libu, dankie. Kees, dankie. Theo, baie dankie. Ons sien
Yes.
Dankie.